it's great to be here today at HowLeader with Joe Crotone. And I know a lot of you are trying to come up the chain and do really well in the startup world. And Joe has amazing experience in the startup world. He's now a vice president of sales for a very exciting and promising company called Enaible. And Joe has made great distinctions. I've watched him over the years give incredible sales presentations, and he knows how to drive his teams, meet with senior executives. I want to get first with Joe a little bit about his results in his last role and kind of the progression into where he is now. And then we'll bring you deep on all the questions. So Joe, it is such an honor to have you here today.
No, thanks, Evan. I appreciate the time. I was super excited for you to reach out and everything you have going on here at HowLeader, and I'm happy to share my experience.
Excellent. And Joe, if you would tell us about, both professionally and even personally, some of your most exciting results. I know in your last role before Enaible, I believe you were #1 in the country for your company, and that kind of set you up for a VP role to come run everything in the way you are now. But bring us through everything a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll do a little bit of a history lesson. So I originally started my career in technically corporate sales for the security division of EMC RSA. I was lucky enough to get here in Boston, they have the EMC summer internship that everyone tries to gun for. And I was lucky enough to get that internship, which then ultimately turned into a full-time role. In that time, I learned a fair amount of just about how a sales organization really works, or at least a sales division within a large organization works, from some great leaders that are pretty well known, former Oracle guys, former EMC guys, individuals that have created plans or strategies like MEDIC. Some of you might not know what that is, but it's a qualification methodology. Anywho, I eventually took a step into the startup world. I was advised at the time from one of my leaders to, somewhat examine this startup world that was happening in the 2010 era here in Boston. And they noticed that a lot of individuals were leaving large corporations and starting these tech companies, and these tech companies were either being acquired or exiting via going public. So it was very exciting to hear these stories of these small companies becoming massive companies with large acquisitions, or potentially going public. And so that's where I made my transition. Fast forward, I ended up at a company called Boston Logic. I was one of the original 20 employees there. And in that time, we grew revenue well enough that a large private equity company called Providence Equity Partners acquired the company, and then from there rebranded as Property Base. I was the #1 sales individual there, and I was the only one that actually reported to the senior vice president of sales. The rest fell under some sort of director and manager layer there. So it was very exciting going from a 20-person company to quickly, via a few acquisitions, to a 200-300 person company. And I think after I left, they're still making acquisitions, and they're still growing company.
Excellent. Wonderful. And then, tell us a little bit about going through those times and getting to today. What are some of the practices that you've learned, Joe, or some of the principles that you apply as far as, how you conduct yourself? Or some people will say to me, hey, I get up at 4 a.m. and I woke up at 4:30 this morning, which is a rarity. I couldn't go back to sleep, but I was just, and I thought I was going to take sort of a part of a self-rest day. But tell us a little bit about what are some of the things that you believe in and that you insist on that have helped make you so successful?
Sure. I think when I first started in my career, being in my early 20s, there was really no practices in place, right? You're young enough and you're hungry and you want to be part of a winning team. And so at that point in my career, what I saw was it was really about willingness and attitude, right? Being the young individual, willing to learn, willing to make mistakes, right? And understand that you are going to make mistakes. But as I started to transition into these more serious roles, my mid-20s to late 20s, my life did drastically change, right? And it went from, like I say, shooting from the hip constantly to more of a structured day. And that started off with, I think starting to eating healthy, right? I mean, you eat healthy because you need those energy levels, right? I was a big coffee guy. I still am, but right, it wasn't, coffee couldn't get me through the day anymore. And I started to realize the big subs at lunch weren't cutting it anymore, right? So that first piece of just remember what you're putting in your body is what your body's going to put back out there, I think, from a physiological standpoint. And so eating healthy, right? I mean, we all like to eat, cake and things like that, but let's try not to eat that at 1:00 in the afternoon on a Wednesday before a big meeting, right? Exercise, right? That was a big thing I needed. And it wasn't for, it's great to be healthy. It's great to be in shape, but it was a stress, reduction process for me, right? And so you have so much going on in sales, and you have your mind is constantly spinning, and you are putting so much energy. And in reality, when you actually have, for me at least, that type of daily exercise, whether it be walking, I mean, I go to the gym 3 times a week and I walk to work, that little type of exercise and even bigger exercises really allows me to get that stress out, right? Dump those cortisol levels, and it would ultimately help me sleep, right? And then if I have a good night rest, I then can start the day over again. So the first thing is really figuring out, what works for you. I tried the 5 a.m. club. I wasn't a 5 a.m. club guy, right? I'm naturally a night owl. I tried the 5 a.m. club. I got up early. I'd go for my walks, I'd go for that little jog. I would do my meditation. I would read the book in the morning, whatever book I was reading. But I noticed for me, by 3:00 in the afternoon, and granted, I was then at that point stepping into the office at 6:30 a.m. versus 7:30, by 4 o'clock, I would get really tired. Now that was for me. So I had to play with that, type of, process or approach to a lifestyle. For me, it's 6 a.m. I have my morning, I wake up, I do a little bit of meditation, about 10, 20 minutes every morning, quietly by myself, and just kind of think about what I have going on for the day. I don't look at my phone, right? I try not to, at least, because I do deal now today with global markets. So I have emails from 2 a.m, till 10:00 at night. And if I see those work emails, I may start to jump into the day and not give myself that time to just say, hey, what does Joe need? What does Joe need to do? What is Joe trying to accomplish today? And more importantly, what can Joe do for himself to be able to help his team and others, right? So again, back to my point, I apologize for the long-winded answer, but
great.
6 a.m., I get up, I have that quiet time to myself. I typically do a little bit of meditation. I'll do a little bit of stretching. I'm more of an afternoon exercise guy, and, have my cup of coffee, get ready for the day, and I walk to work, right? And then when I get into work, it's, the most productive part of the day are those first 2 to 3 hours. I try to avoid emails the best I can, right? Because you can get really sucked into that email, just absurdity. And I really focus on what are the big objectives that I need to do, whether that is creating a new sales presentation for a client, or creating a new contract for a client, or maybe having, going through our go-to-market strategy for the company. Could be training an individual, right? So for me, I have that morning to myself, come to the office, and I try and do like the big, productive things that I need to do. Like, what are my big objectives? What are the big chunks that I can take out of the day? From there, I'm in sales. So it's at that point, you can only be as proactive as possible. You're then in reactive mode, right? So now you're just, you're a strong safety or shortstop, and you're just, okay, which way is the play going? Where am I needed? How can I be an MVP? And then the day typically tailors down into, I like to work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday at lunch for about an hour here in downtown Boston. I come back, I'm revived. And then it's, connecting with my CEO, connecting with my team, connecting with my board. Are there any administrative small little tasks that I need to do? And then, I head home and that's, how I power down for the day.
That's wonderful. Okay, fantastic. And it sounds like you're really good from a practices standpoint in organizing your information, doing Joe's self-care, the meditation, not getting pulled into things. And I know you and I are very similar that way. Like, we won't start the day without meditation, but it's because it gives such amazing benefits. It's so crisp and energizes and cleans us. So I totally get that. And what a wonderful overview. And it also, shows people that, hey, you don't just come sit around and read the paper and wait for things to happen. You have a plan to make things happen proactively, as well as to respond to things that are coming towards you that are powerful and positive. So, okay, great, get that. That's wonderful. And tell me, if you could, Joe, and the listeners, about principles, because business goes fast, right? And everybody I've interviewed and for this series here really speaks about honesty, being trustworthy, integrity, all these practices that help them really forward to the next level and keep them engaged in their relationships. And these are, every CEO, every senior person. Tell us about principles. Like, what do you stand by and what's important for you? And what do you kind of put in the forefront for yourself in business and in?
Yeah, I mean, so I think for myself, as I came out of my early 20s and mid 20s, you start to want to become a certain somebody, and that certain somebody is determined by principles. Excuse me. And for me, I appreciate someone who is a principled individual, whether their principles are different than mine, right? I think figuring out who you want to be, and then standing by that is, that takes some great integrity. So to go into my specific principles, I think it's a few things. One is honesty, right? You have to be honest with yourself in the situation, and you need to be honest with others. Being in sales, right? It's very easy for us to be, I don't want to say dishonest, but there can be a lot of gray areas, right? Because we want to win the deal, right? We want to say we have something that we might not have, in hopes that it may help win the deal. And what I've learned, especially, throughout the years that I've worked, the more brutally honest you are with the client, with your coworkers, at the end of the day, it may not give you the result that you want in that moment, but the relationship is built on strong foundation, and it will somehow come back around in return. And so, for me, that honesty with coworkers and clients is imperative. And it goes all the way down to if my CEO asked if I sent an individual an email. And it's not like I'm going to get in trouble if I say no, but I may have the feeling or want to say, oh yeah, I got it done, even though I didn't, right? And it's those little subtle moments that you just want to catch and just say, you know what, I didn't get it done, I'm going to get it done right now. And that's it, right? And so you want to make sure that fear is not driving, behaviors for you, right? And it's very important. And then that's where it comes into being honest with yourself. Are you happy at your job? Are you doing the best you absolutely can? Are you helping other people? Are you expressing your true feelings? Are you communicating? Are you holding things in, right? And again, there are certain things that you may want to have discussions with family and friends about work. You don't want to bust into your boss's office and really express your true feelings. You may want to run that by someone before you go and take those steps, but you do want to be honest with those individuals. So it's always good to, bounce those ideas off of someone outside of the office, just to make sure that, you don't want to step on anybody's toes, because you are in a professional environment, right? And so you do want to be professional. But I've learned that that type of honesty is great. I think some other principles is trying to be as selfless as possible, right? You really are part of a team, And everyone has their own experiences, and everyone has their own perceptions, right? And so at the end of the day, yes, we all work for the same company, but we all come from different backgrounds, and we all have different things going at home. And it is hard to keep that open-mindedness and try and put yourself in others' shoes, but practicing that and thinking like, well, I don't know how this individual woke up today. I don't know what's going on in their life. Let me take that into consideration before I react to anything. But at the same time, how can Joe remove himself and just say, hey, I'm part of the team. How can I help? Right? And then that drops back into the whole honesty thing of, can you actually help, or are you too busy with other things, right? Like there's now a boundary set. No, I can't do that. Right. And so for me, it's, honesty is a pillar, hard work, asking for help, being selfless, to the best of your ability, and, having an overall good attitude. Right. And, being someone that people can approach you, because you're a team player, you're willing, and you're always willing to offer a lending hand.
Excellent. It's so powerful, Joe. And in thinking big and taking risks. So, but you're also saying too, like, yeah, we can make connections, but like, don't open your heart at work, and understood, because I think that we all learn and relearn that lesson, and we've talked about, the different things before and the boundaries, and hardest lesson of all, right? Sometimes the universe kind of helps us get to know people, and I think that, but then the universe always kind of sends us in the direction of, hey, do the next right thing. This isn't, the right path. And I think that, but in giving to people, in dealing with people and taking risks, I want to say too, and one thing I know you're aware of, like, if you want to see who someone is, obviously you do a couple nice things for them, right? Or, a coworker or a client, like, people will always reveal to you out of when you give to them or do a couple nice gestures. But how do you gauge, like, who you're going to participate with, at what level, who's going to be in your inside circle there in what you're doing? Because relationships is big. And I wanted to ask you, what are relationships for you at work and in sales? I know they're big in sales, but tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I don't think there's any like true playbook on, hey, who should you take bets on at work on, who you can trust. Again, you want to be open-minded and you want to approach things with an open heart, but at the end of the day, we are part of the human race, right? And again, like I mentioned, people come from different experiences and backgrounds, and, they're going to be human, and there could be some negative connotations to that. And you just want to mitigate that risk to the best of your ability. But for me, when it comes to relationships, I think keeping certain, things private, your personal life private, to an extent. Again, you want to have you're in a professional environment. Now, at some point, someone directly on your team who you're sitting, next to day in and day out, you're going to start to learn about their family. You're going to start to, learn about their problems, right? And, at the same time, you're in the trenches with this individual, and you'll know if they want to be a winner too, because you'll see them offering help. You'll see them working hard. You may see a couple colorful moments with them, but again, that's fine. We all get stressed at work, but you really want to see who the team players are, and you want to surround yourself with people that are equally, if not harder working than you are, right? Because they're going to push you, right? A players want to be part of a winning team, right? And if you show up and you have a bunch of C players, you yourself are going to be demotivated, right? And so you want to look at those principles that we talked about, right? And those characteristics and those personalities that you appreciate and you respect. They may be different than yours, but you appreciate and you respect those personalities and those principles. And from there, and then it takes time, right? You're going to be with these people, right? And you're going to figure it out, right? And listen, if it's some guy in finance that you see once a month, like, I wouldn't stress too much about that. It's teams that you're working with all the time. And the same with clients, right? I think with clients, I try and take the most, I would say, professional view as possible. It's always good, to connect with people on a personal basis. Oh, hey, where did you go to school? Or do you have kids? Or, where do you live? And have those shared stories that you might have. But at the end of the day, they're here for business reasons. You're here for business reasons. You want to be as upright as possible, right? And you want to be honest. If you said you're going to do something and something fell through, you come back to them and you say, hey, there's a situation. I want you to be aware of it. I want to tell you right now, right away. And they'll appreciate that, because again, in the business world, we all know that not everything's going to flow, completely smoothly, right? So again, you want that type of relationship from a professional aspect if you're more client facing and what have you. And then from there, it's just now, you're just gauging, right? You're constantly observing, making sure, and you're also not looking into it too much, right? You're just kind of looking for the signals, and again, you base it on people's actions, right? What have they done, not what they said. And from there, you'll have a good history with someone, and you'll be able to have some solid judgment on a scenario that how you want to approach it and what have you.
So wonderfully said, Joe. This is great. And I was going to say too, for people that are listening, you talked a lot about the little things at different points, and I think that a lot of times people are looking at the little things, right, before if they're going to make a big investment with you, either to purchase your product, to be a customer, to partner with you. So follow up, thoughtfulness. I know a lot of people that they do get on the personal level too, where they find out what their clients like or customers like, and they try to do things to show that this isn't just, they're not just here to take the money, right? They're here to care and give. And I think sometimes, we all have learned to run test runs to see what people are all about, right? But tell me about the little things like, follow up and doing things to kind of connect with the clients, because obviously you can go and sell a product and get them excited, but in knowing you, Joe, people buy you too. They like Joe, and I know you've also created some great close friendships with work people and with myself and others, but I know those are few and those are chosen, right? But tell me a little bit about how do you connect with them to get them to then talk about the sale with you?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day in my role, right, I am trying to sell a specific piece of SaaS software, right? And there's so many pieces of SaaS software out there. And it's about doing your research, right? And hey, what does Evan Pellett do? Where is he from? Where did he go to school? Is he part of any clubs that I should know about? Is he part of any country clubs? Is he a golfer? Did he play any sports in college, right? What are some of his interests? What are some of the groups that he's followed? Has he ever been in the Wall Street Journal, or is he showcased in this article, that article? And you really want to see and learn, hey, this is this person's professional experience. This is their professional reputation. And then from there, you can start to figure out, okay, he went to school here. He grew up over here in New England. Okay, so he's probably a hockey guy, right? You can start to just kind of really look at that. But what I try and do is do the opposite of what sales people are trained to do, or they think they need to do. They think that they need to push their agenda. You need this, you need this, you need this. Let me talk about myself. Let me talk about myself and all the things that I have, and here are all the great things I can do for you. And I was like that, right, when I first started in sales. And I later found out, as I started to deal with bigger and bigger companies, and, now C-levels of Fortune 500 companies, they get pitched all the time, right? And what they want is they want someone that has done the due diligence and say, wow, this guy or this gal has taken an interest in me and understands my problems, and he or she is trying to bring me a solution, right? And what I've learned is the more I talk about the individual and what they're going through, right, and less about myself, the more that they will respond, the more that they will talk, and then I can actually start to pull pieces from those conversations out. Sometimes it's almost subconscious that they let things out that they didn't even know. You start to become almost a borderline therapist, And then at the end of conversations I've had multiple times, they've talked for 30 minutes out of a 45-minute conversation, and they go, "What do you do again?" And you just say, "Oh, this is what I do here, here, and here." Now I've gathered so much information. They're like, "Yeah, okay, let's set up that next call," right? And so that's with someone who is in charge of, signing off on the deal. Again, that'll get passed off to team members that are more doing technical due diligence and things like that. And of course, if you can try and connect with people on that personal note, it's going to be helpful. They may just be by the book. "Hey, I have 10 questions, answer these." And, you have to gauge. But what I've learned is the more I've taken an interest in someone else and what they're dealing with and talking about their problems, the more that they respond to me versus me saying, "Hey, I have the next best thing of sliced bread. You need to talk to me. You have to do this. Let me talk more about myself, if that makes sense."
Wow, that is such a powerful distinction, Joe, and the connection piece. And I think that's where we genuinely do care about people and transform lives, right? And get connected in. And I know that's one of your super strong qualities, and I enjoy doing that as well. And okay, excellent. And I was going to say too, sometimes we do an entry or we're trying to connect, and you get that customer, you've done a couple nice things, and you're like right at the pinnacle, you're like, and you're wide open, your heart's, hey, and you've learned about them, and then they gaslight you, or they put they hit you with a harpoon right in the gut. What, when that happens in life, with those people, because everybody deals with them as a salesperson or otherwise, and it's often a surprise, right, when we get that kind of reaction and that discovery. But where do you go after that? And what does that tell you? Hey, are you talking to the wrong person? Should you, be like, "Hey, I'm done with this," or should you, reinvest? How do you get in there with a person like that? Because the other thing is that person might be your sponsor and things too. So if they can't react when you're being kind or good, or they do something, thoughtless, or people get passive aggressive, what do you do to kind of bring them in and warm them up, or just even get past them to the next person? How do you deal with someone like that is having some difficulty?
Yeah, no, sure. So, there's a few things to kind of break down, and it's almost like, if this, then that, if this, then that. If there's a situation like that happens where I've gone down the path, I've checked all the boxes, and all of a sudden, maybe they stop responding, or they go in a completely different direction. The first thing I have to ask myself is, did I truly qualify this person, or was I being hopeful, right? I don't like to call it a sales process. It's very much using specific qualification methodologies, right? And that's me doing my due diligence. Who is this person? Are they a champion? Are they an influencer? Are they a budget holder? Are they a combination of those three? Who do they report to, right? And for me in the enterprise level, it's not one person making the decision, right? There are multiple. But if my point of contact all of a sudden, disappears or switches something over, or, gives me that harpoon to the gut that you mentioned, I have to say, did I qualify this person well enough, right? Or was I being hopeful? That's the first thing I need to ask myself, right? And if I did, and I can honestly say to myself, hey, I went through all of the things that I'm supposed to go through. I followed up with everything that I said, really, again, being honest with yourself, right? I really helped this individual out. There's a breakdown here. And at that point, also being a principled person, and you don't want to stand on a moral high top, but if you do all those things, you can go right back to that person and say, hey, we had a conversation about X. You told me this didn't happen. What is the breakdown here? And you have to be honest with them, right? And say, hey, I was on the path, or we were on the path of getting this done. Now, granted, there could be a reorg in the company, COVID, changing budgets. There's those things that are out of their control, right? And that is what it is. That's business. But if all of a sudden someone's integrity, is starting to, wander off, I think there's nothing wrong with going through that motion and having that conversation, because one or two things will happen. One, if the deal's dead, then the deal's dead, and you can make your stance. You can be honest and just say, hey, I was honest with that guy. It is what it is. Someone, screwed me over, right? Or that person may have a moment and say, you know what, I do need to. Actually, Joe did bring me through this process, and I did tell him I was going to do X, Y, and Z. I do need to move forward, right? So there's that piece. The other is you could try and go to other people within the company. It really depends on the dynamic. Every deal's different. And at the end of the day, I'm very much the person, if I checked all the boxes and they still say no, you just, go off and you go to the next deal. At the end of the day, every no is going to bring you to that yes. And you're not going to bat 1,000, right? It's like that Michael Jordan, he made so many three throws, or 3-pointers, but he missed over 5,000, right? He was always keeping track of what he missed. So, you can't take it to heart. You have to keep moving forward, and it's just like life, right? You're going to have situations that you wish it didn't happen, and you have to move forward, right? You have to know that you're not going to die, and, you survived and you're going to get through it, and that's it. And you got to keep going. You want to learn from those mistakes. And that's it, right? You want to constantly be learning, refining, and trying to become a better player, right? And I think that goes from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint.
That's great. That's a great point too, personal and professional. And so you're looking them in the eye, but sometimes, if they didn't keep their word, or they didn't, they suddenly kind of showed up in a different way, you have to step left sometimes. Like, okay, not that I don't like, or I'm not dealing, you just say, and be kind, but put your energy, the majority of it, elsewhere. Yep, because I know, and you're like me, and sometimes we want to do everything to help people. And sometimes too, you'll get people that will commit to you and say, well, I'd love to do that, or I want to do this, or this sounds great. And you lay out the red carpet for them, right? Customers or otherwise. And they kind of come up with sort of a, they'll not keep their word, not keep their agreement, or they'll kind of go to fear, right? And be like, and kind of throw all these crazy things that aren't accurate. But customers do some pretty wild things when they don't want to kind of go the path, and you're kind of opening the door. How do you, I know you keep your word, and how do you enforce it? Or how do you address it and it's very similar to kind of what you were saying in the last answer, but if someone doesn't keep their word, or they don't have the courage, or they're kind of lazy, they don't want to make the effort and walk through their fear to go do things and look in the eyeball and meet, and especially if you're going to help them with your product or personally or otherwise, how do you then address that?
I think it's, again, you're going to hear me bring up honesty a fair amount. It was something that even I struggled with when I was younger. And it's not always, hey, I have, $1 million home, it's more of be honest with yourself, and also help that person be honest, right? And there's been plenty of times where I've gone into a conversation where all of a sudden things started to get squirrely, maybe with a sales deal. And you just want to give that person the out, right? You just say, hey, Evan, we talked about X, Y, and Z. We kind of laid out these steps. This conversation that we're having right now. And it's okay if you say no, but it seems like this isn't going to move forward from this conversation. And they'll either go one or two ways. Oh, no. I do want to do this, this, and this. Or they'll go, oh, I can't. You're right, man. It's been killing me because I know we had such great conversations, and I didn't want to let you down, right? And give people the out, right? It's like when your parents come to you and you're in trouble, and they give you that out where they're just like, if you tell me right now what happened, I'm not going to get mad, right? And you want to have that with people, because people don't like to say no, right? And if you give them that out, you might be able to lay them down softly. And then you just know from there, hey, it is what it is. No big deal. I appreciate your honesty. Is there anything we can do to maybe try and get this done, right? Is there something that I can help you with? Or should we just table this for the time being? Because if that's the case, I do have to be mindful of my time, and I want to be mindful of your time, and we can pick things up at a later moment, right? And it's just it's okay. It's okay. And that's typical. That's most of the time. I have yet to deal with customers that have been flat out lie to me now. If anything, they're more brutally honest. They're like, hey, this is going on. This is what's going to happen. This is the timeline. And I'm just taking notes and saying, okay. It's been a bit since I've had to like really ask someone, hey, is this going to go forward, or, but you have to do that, and it's the same with personal life too, right? I mean, we all have relationships, and, you got the wife at home and she might not be talking to you, or she might seem off, and like, you want to give her the out, right? Like, hey, is there something going on that you want to talk to me about? Like, you want to create that space of just, hey, everything aside, you, me, right now, human to human, what's going on, And if you can create that stage or that floor, you'd be surprised what people will do. And back to my point of just asking questions about them. What's going on? How are you? Everything okay? Is there something I can do? And they'll open right up most of the time.
Yeah, buddy. That's such a wonderful point too, because one of my growth areas, and I know I've shared, like, as we've talked in the past about like things and that we grow through, is one of mine was like, one of my dishonesties is I wouldn't share my true feelings with people, right? Or I wouldn't take a risk. And I just, I became not untactfully open, but I've taken a lot more like, hey, this is what I see in the situation. What do you think? And I think a lot of times with a customer, what can sometimes bring something to a closure or a good spot is sharing our true feelings, right? And saying, hey, this is what I perceive. This is what I think. Am I accurate? Because sometimes they'll say, oh no, actually, I was thinking about something else, Joe, or I was here, or I was there. And so we can create a solution. And I see such great practices and principles, Joe, and pieces of success. I was going to say, from your standpoint too, one of the things we all often look at too with HowLeader is we see this finished product of, handsome young man, who's vice president of sales, everything's come together. And a lot of people say, well, geez, I couldn't be as good looking as him, or I can't, communicate the way he does. I even had a gentleman who's in charge of an amazing book company who used to be very shy on the other day. And now he speaks like Tony Robbins, and he's worked at becoming himself. And he talked about his growth and his breakthroughs. I was going to ask you, with what you've been doing, and kind of what's happened here, has there been any time where you've been tested or where you had to say, hey, I got to dig deep, and I'm going to break through, whether it's losing a big deal or a time in life where you said, hey, I have to change something, where you've had to have that growth mindset of, all right, I'm going to grab myself by the bootstraps and pull myself up. Has that happened for you?
Yeah, I think, it's happened on a professional and personal level. I think, I mentioned earlier, like in my 20s when I was just the gunslinger and you had all sorts of energy, you were all over the place, with that was, a lot of extracurricular activities, right? And, partying and going to the bars and living the client life and doing all that. And there was a point where, that post work or after work lifestyle started to intrude on my professional work. And I had to make a decision of, hey, do I want to continue this party lifestyle and try and stay young forever? Or do I really want to take my career seriously? And there was trade-offs, and that was, slowing down with drinking, ultimately to the point where, I don't drink anymore. Right. You go to, becoming much more health conscious, right? And you go into, I took my professional career more seriously than, trying to continue my college life, right? And I think it's good. I mean, listen, if you're in college and you're having a good time, like, get your yayas out. And it's okay, to have a cocktail after work and things like that. But you have to gauge that work-life balance, and you want to have a work-life balance. But if the wildness and partying and things like that start to, get in the way, or an unhealthy relationship with somebody, start to get into way of things, you really want to revisit. And, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? And so asking for help, making those changes and sticking to it, from a personal life, you have to figure out what works for you, right? And that's what I had to do, and everybody's different. From a professional standpoint, man, I've had plenty of heartbreaks. I've gone from, working for startups that you think everything's good, and then, the company ran out of money, right? I've had big deals completely collapse in front of me, right? And whether it was me not doing my due diligence, right? I think, which is probably the harder one to take, because if it was my fault or my responsibility to get something done and I didn't get it done and it fell through and I let the team down, I've had that happen. At the end of the day, and some guys, some deals just fall through because there's just extenuating circumstances that you're just unaware of. And, you just have to understand that that's life. That's going to happen. And you have to make those changes, learn from it, refine, and move forward and test, right? You're constantly A/B testing, right? I mentioned earlier in this conversation, I tried the 5 a.m. club, right? I was just like, hey, a lot of guys, this is a great book. A lot of guys are doing it. I'm going to do it. Did it for 1 week. And I said, I can't do it. I'm too tired, right? And so you have to try things. And that's a big thing. It's like, be willing to try things and know that you're going to fail, and I always like to say, other individuals say it, fail often, fail fast, or fail fast and fail often, right? Like, learn quick and just know and just accept it. Just be like, yep, I'm a human. That didn't work. I'm changing, right? But if you're staying stuck in something and expecting those different results, you're going to have a hard time, and you're not going to progress.
God, that's such great wisdom, Joe. And, and not staying stuck, right? Fail fast. And I think that sometimes our emotions get caught up in things, right? And we, even a failure, we're like, how did I do this? How did I get here? What did I do? And sometimes even observing ourselves, I've sometimes observed myself and been like, wait, where did that come from? That's not, and laughed at myself, been like, okay, you were going fast. You got 60 things going on. I totally understand that. And I was going to say, with that, Joe, as we look at, growing and having a growth mindset, is there, practices as far as, you mentioned meditation and you mentioned, not drinking and like, a lot of people do different things to combat stress, right? And sales is stressful, plus it's a fun time. But my guess is it sounds like you've learned to have inner freedom and be able to have fun and soothe yourself and kind of do life. And I know a lot of people who love hanging out with you, or when we, we'll visit, it seems like, it feels like the mayors have come to town and we're like, yeah, but tell us about, finding happiness without the party life and exercise, meditation. Like, what can some people do if they want to be their best? Because I know when I kind of changed out of some of my behaviors that were more about, having fun, which I still have, my God, so much fun. But point being is that I was freed up a lot more. I had a lot more energy. I found I could do excellence. My head was clear. I love going to all the parties and the weekends and stuff, but I really kind of got into my game when I, put things forward and ahead. So I was going to ask you, tell me about, how do you maintain, and even, from a fun standpoint, are there things that you do to activities, to kind of when you're done with enaible and you're done with the 50 things you've got to do, how do you take care of Joe?
Yeah. So, I think, again, other than like the daily meditation and the diet and exercise, right? Like that just keeps Joe's energy running. I shouldn't say diet, eating healthy to the best of my ability. I live in the North End in Boston, so I'll always go get a chicken parm, right? And I do like my occasional cigar at night. There are these little things that I enjoy, right? And I think it's also picking up specific hobbies, right? I am an avid golfer, right? And the groups of guys that I hang out with, like, we golf almost every weekend, right? And so like that's my kind of go-to, from a personal level. and there could be all different types. What are those hobbies might be? I think, I enjoy, traveling. I enjoy, cruising around the city. I enjoy, going to movies. There is plenty to do, right? But you want to kind of find your people, right? And you have your work people, and then, you have your social network, right? Outside of work. And, what are those things? Do you want to go kayaking? Do you want to go fishing? Whatever that is, hiking, it could be anything, right? But you want to have something that you enjoy, and more importantly, something that you're trying to excel at. Like, what's a personal thing that do you want to get good at? Do you want to be able to hike Mount Everest? I don't know. That's a great accomplishment. Do you want to learn how to surf, right? Do you want to be an avid fisherman? It's endless, right? But we all have some sort of, we all have some sort of want or need to do things. Maybe you're a family man, and it's just, hey, I'm spending time with my family, right? That's another big thing for guys and gals who work, right? They're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. They don't have time to go golfing, and that's fine, right? But they're like, I'm going to spend time with my kids. I'm going to spend time with my spouse, and we're going to go do things together, right? There's some sort of, relationship that you're trying to curate with people and build, right? And at the end of the day, that's all we really have is just relationships. And we really want to have solid relationships. And then, of course, if there are things that you want to work on your own, like a hobby, whatever that might be, and you want to excel at that, I don't think there's nothing wrong with that. That's your personal hobby that you want to get better at, and you put in the time and you put in the effort, and you go through those trials and tribulations. And so, I can speak for myself. I golf every weekend, and I have a golf instructor, and I go to the driving range, and I'm not on the PGA Tour, right? So, it's stressful at times, but I enjoy it. It's something I like to work towards, right? And so it's bettering ourselves in all aspects of our life, some way, somehow, whether it's through, spiritual growth, via meditation, or, your physical, or just overall, mental. Like, how can I be better? If you can be better 1% every day over and over again, you're going to grow as a human being.
Yes. Wow. It was such powerful examples. And I think it's important for people to understand too, that like, you have to insist on taking care of yourself. You have to insist on your relationships, or being present with family and doing the things that you need to. Some people get so caught up in work, they get burned out. 5 years pass. I know it happened to me when I was at Oracle. I took one summer, no vacation, and I was, breaking records, and it was good, but I was really on the deferred life plan for many years of corporate. And Joe, one of the most important things that we're doing with HowLeader is we're giving people who are out there across the world the opportunity to get some mentorship from Joe Crotone, and to learn principles, practices, even times you've struggled, and how did you walk out of that, right? Because some people might be in a breakdown in their life or a time of struggle, and they're like, I'm never going to get past this. And when they hear someone who has worked and walked through things and things have come out great, they get super excited. So I was going to ask for you, tell us about, mentors for you, like who's been your most impactful person in your life, or mentors, and why? Like, what have they meant to you?
Yeah, I don't think I could pick one. I have personal mentors. I have family members that are, healthy male figures in my life. I have a plethora of professional guys that I could just be like, Billy Taylor, Steve Simmons. Like, I could just run down the list of men and women, that have been, pivotal. But I think what they've done is that they've became a mentor, and I would say they became a mentor. Some of them were, officially mentors, right? Like in some sort of official capacity. Others were just unofficial. And they were just individuals that had experience, longer than I did. And they were willing to listen to me, and they identified in me that I was a, young man that was up and coming, and I was willing, and they came and helped me, right? Because I asked for help, and they said, I've been through this, I've done that, check this out, right? And, it's, it's been so important. I wouldn't have been here without half of those. I can't even imagine where I would be without those guys, right? I mean, they paved the way. They shined light on things that I was unaware of, right? It was like Grant's book. It's about we don't know what we don't know, right? And if someone who does know can also, kind of shed that light and just kind of also share experiences, and it realizes that you're not alone, right? Like, it's just like, hey, it's okay. You're supposed to be in this spot, welcome to growing up, or, welcome to your first 5 years of sales, or welcome to your first 90 days of sales, whatever that might be. It's good to have that type of relationship, and, then you just have someone that you can lean on in those scenarios, and you're not feeling like an island.
Good. And that's so important for people to hear is, someone has done so well like Joe, he welcomes great mentorship and he moves towards that in his life, as opposed to saying, I'm going to figure it all out, get away everybody, and I think though we often can do what I cannot, right? We all come together and we can make a difference with things. And just more towards closing, Joe, from a question standpoint as well, some people are obviously looking for mentors. They're going to watch your interview. And one of the things we'll probably talk about soon is a couple classes or things Joe could teach about in sales, about how to do it in a great way. And that's something, we'll talk more later on. But a lot of people, would love to be able to take you to lunch and get that time. But if they did, they wouldn't know what to ask you, like all these questions I've been asking, or bring you kind of deep on things. So this gives them a real intimacy or an intimacy. Yeah. But if you were evaluating someone to mentor them and people are watching saying, hey, I want to be Joe, or I want to walk on this path, what is your feedback to them about what someone like you would look for in mentoring people? How do they need to show up and participate?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, those kind of pillars and principles. It's like, how honest can you be, right? Are you willing to, and I guess, no pun intended, and your willingness, right? Your willingness to excel, your willingness to, do whatever it takes, right? Within ethical boundaries, right? And just being honest and asking for help. And for me, if I can see those traits, that this person is hungry, they're resourceful, like they really want this. And, there's a difference between really wanting it and knowing that you're going to have to put in the work, and then just thinking that you want it, right? And you can pick that up on people. A lot of people want to be a vice president of sales, or a lot of people want to be, an NFL quarterback, but do you really know what it takes? And are you willing to really go through what it takes to get there? And you can get that, just from a first conversation with people, right? And you can see by within, the first couple weeks of working with them, first couple months of working with them, are they really, really trying? Are they really grinding it out? I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've seen with my mentors, my leaders, and even team members that have done well. They're grinders, right? And if they can't figure it out, they'll either learn how to figure whatever the situation or whatever the problem is, or they'll find someone to do it, right? That resourcefulness. So, long story short, willingness, resourceful, are they grinders, are they hungry, right? And, are they willing to learn and all that? And then of course, obviously good personality. You don't have to be super talkative, but you have just a good cordial personality, respectful personality. And you'll be fine.
Okay, excellent, Joe. Excellent. And second to last question, I want to mention and ask, a lot of people are chasing money and they want to, achieve. And one of the fallacies we're finding, right, is like, I think I remember I had 6 cars in the driveway, every sports car I wanted at one point, in a 10,000 square foot home down in Maryland. And I was pretty content and happy because I was doing the drill, but I was still putting success for some years at the C-level, beyond my inner peace and beyond other things. And it was fun to attain those things, right? And we were all kind of showing our prizes. But what I was going to say, in like, the people that want to get better, they want to be a better person, they want to grow. And I just want to preface this, like, when I've helped someone with personal growth, like, or been a, guide or a coach, as I know you have, often we're putting in 30 hours or 40 or 60 with that person, right? A lot of time in person, walking with them, talking to them. Like, sometimes people think, oh, I do one thing and it's better, right? But I think there's a trust walk. But those of us who have kind of become executives and done well, it's an investment of time. And if someone wants to grow as a person, what would you say? I know it's different per person, but an investment of hours might be in their personal self, whether it's taking human potential trainings, reading books, getting a professional coach. Like, how many hours do you think it really takes to make a change? I know I've spent 8-hour days with some people before, walking and talking.
Yeah. Well, I think, it's almost, what is it? It takes 10,000 hours to be a master, right? And so if you want to be a master of yourself, it's going to take you 10,000 hours. So the point is that it's not a one-stop shop where, like, you're just going to go to, like, a Tony Robbins workshop and you're just going to, figure it out, right? It takes time. You got to put in that effort. But I mean, it's really up to the individual, right? If you're looking for fast, hard results and you think you need some radical changes, and, like, you're putting in five hours a day on yourself, great. I mean, if you have that time, fantastic. But you may have a full-time job, so maybe you give yourself that hour in the morning and maybe an hour at night. Maybe you do 5 hours on a Saturday, right? Or 3 hours on a Saturday, 2 hours on a Sunday, for whatever that might be. I mean, so now I just put out 10, that's 15 hours in 1 week that you just put on yourself, right? Maybe you want to do 5. It's really up to the individual and what you're trying to achieve. And I think, the more you put in, that, I think, if you double the time, you'll be, done in half the time, right? And so, it's really up to the individual. But I think, the most important thing is you gotta want to give yourself at least an hour a day to yourself, whether that might be just quiet meditation, alone, reflective time, might be reading a book, right, on something that is going to help you with your specific career or for growth or what have you. So, you definitely want to have that time to yourself, for sure.
Yes. Okay, great. And I think it's important for the listeners to understand too is, Joe, things are great and they've come to this awesome place, but investing in yourself is so important. And in my last question, perhaps the most important question of all, making a difference for others, being in service for others, making an impact in the world, Joe. Sometimes we get so busy, it's hard to do that, but what does that mean to you? And how do you get rewarded from helping or being in service?
I was once at a big foundation here in Boston a few years ago, and a successful man who's, I think he was the president of Cushman Wakefield at the time, he's elsewhere, said, and this was the point, this was the point where he was, it was a foundation for a specific, it was actually the Corey Griffin Foundation, and, it was check writing time. Right. He went into his speech of, you learn, you earn, and you return. Right. And, when you're younger, you're just learning. Right. And then there's going to be a point where you're just earning, whether that is, earning. It could be money. It could be, promotions. It could be any of that. But then at some point you have to give it back. Right. That return. And it was perfect timing because, he looked at half the guys that were probably over the age of 50, and he was like, it's return time, you guys, because he knew that they were successful, right? And it was kind of funny, but taking what he actually said, learn, earn, return, what I've tried to do is that the more that I've earned from the universe, from my job, from my family, from all that, I do need to give something back. And, what I do now is, I give people my time, right? Whether it's for a professional standpoint and they're looking for guidance, or it's a personal standpoint where there could be, family members that need some help. You always get a call from the younger cousin that's struggling, because I was a wild child as well, right? And it's just like, hey, talk to Joe, those moments where it's just, if I can give someone my time, and help them and guide them and, maybe take them out to eat and, create that stage or that table where they can unload and I can help sift through and ultimately maybe come up with some solutions for them. Whether they take action on it or not, that's up to them. But, by doing that and giving someone my time and ultimately just showing them love. I mean, that's ultimately what you're doing, right? One way or another. That makes me feel good, right? That makes me feel good. And I'm glad that I can pass that down, because there have been plenty of men in my life that have taken time out of their day with their families, their professional careers, to sit down and talk to some wild young 20-year-old in sales and help me. I don't forget those guys. And I make sure that I pass that down.
That's so powerful, Joe. And what I wanted to point out there to people too is, when you get, a lot of the reward is in giving back of yourself or in giving love, as you say. And sometimes we give love and, people respond and they awaken, and other times they don't. They're just, they don't it's almost when the teacher is ready or the student's ready, the teacher will appear, but sometimes the student scurries off, and goes to kind of live like I did, which was like 5 lifetimes of fun before I was, a certain point in time. Like I just was chasing the outside stuff, but now, the inner world is where it's at, and winning the inner game. And the only thing we, really ask in closing, Joe, is there any other wisdom, and you've given a plethora of great information, but any other thoughts, recommendations, things that you would want to share with people that are up and coming or established, anything that you want to summarize?
Yeah, I think, from there's kind of two sides, professional and personal. From a personal standpoint, we're all a little different, but find what works for you, right? Create that schedule, right? Find those hobbies, create that healthy lifestyle that works for you, right? And stick to it and try new things, right? Constantly try, have that willingness to try new things to better yourself. Whether that's going to the gym more often, meditating, doing yoga, sailing, whatever that might be, right? Have that you time and better you at one way or another. From a professional standpoint, I really only speak to sales. If you're an up-and-coming sales individual, I don't want to say warn you, but instead of chasing the bigger salary, if you're young and you're new, find companies that have good training programs and good leadership. Because I have seen in my career guys who have jumped a little too early, and eventually their career stalls because they didn't have that foundational training. And they'll see people that maybe started behind them all of a sudden start to surpass. So you might be in between this job of, hey, I can make 100K here, and I'm going to be in that position that I'm not quite qualified for, but I can probably figure it out, versus, hey, this one's for 70. They have a phenomenal training program. They're going to send me here. These guys have a specific, program on how to do this type of sales methodology. I'm going to get certifications, right? I would suggest you really research that second option. Because if you can create that foundation at a young age, you will be successful. And then only from there, you can just build on those building blocks, and you're going to have a sturdy foundation. And that's probably the best advice I could give someone.
Such powerful advice, Joe, too, and just amazing. And interestingly enough, it doesn't just have to be sales or corporate too. We have our friend Anthony, who was a dean at Emerson and had a wonderful career, right? And serving people and giving back. And even in retirement, he just keeps giving back and helping and making a difference. Like, I was actually going to introduce someone. I had someone I was going to have come in to mentor this past week, and it didn't come together, but I was going to introduce them to Anthony because they liked Emerson, and I know he's got that inside track. And also Sheila over at Harvard. But, I think we want to mentor, we want to help. And, it's interesting. And last thing, when as you go forward in things too, Joe, in kind of the climate with COVID, do you feel like also, just because I feel like you have such great insight, I just want to capture this. Any insights in COVID as people are coming back in, or they've been struggling with their sales numbers down? I know you've done really well, but I've seen some people that had the best lives and their income got cut in half during COVID, and they had never been tested emotionally, right? And
Mm.
so just and that's awful, but we've been tested, we've grown. Any thoughts for people after your COVID or during it?
For those coming back from COVID, COVID, it's kind of that once in 100 year situation, right? I mean, no one could prepare for that. It does make you want to look at, the type of job position that you have, right? And what is your company selling, or what is your company offering, right? And you want to look at the companies that thrived, right? And you're like, why did that company thrive? Why are their sales numbers up, right? Not that I'm saying that the company you work for is bad, but it might be time that you want to maybe reconsider, right? And just say, hey, maybe I should be moving into more of this type of space, right? Because then I don't have to worry about these things. It's almost COVID resistant, right? So those are a few things that you want to look at. Or, it's the opportunity for you to, look at your current company and see if you're going to be part of that team that brings that company back up, if you want to be part of that, right? So there are a lot of different angles to look at, but I would probably say, if your company got really shellacked, during COVID, and it looks like they're struggling to come back, again, like I mentioned, COVID really did reveal some gaps in our society, our business, our mental health. And again, nothing changes if nothing changes. So if you're not happy at your job and you came back and COVID, made it even worse, you might want to reconsider.
Yeah.
And maybe look at some other areas and try and find some winning teams. Because at the end of the day, if you're in sales, you want to be on the winning team.